We've got another great story to share with you today, an inspiring journey into local government leadership, because that's what we do here on the Halting Winter podcast. We tell the stories behind the titles, the unique paths into public service, and the moments that shape how these leaders show up, even when the work gets heavy. Every day, local government quietly makes modern life possible, and behind every service is a person doing work that often goes unseen. This is the Halting Winter podcast, and I'm Seth Winterhalter. Every week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with local government leaders from across the country that remind us where government really lives, locally, doing the work that truly matters. This is the work that builds belonging. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tyler Technologies has been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998, partnering with cities and counties to make their work more manageable, more connected, and more effective. From smarter budgeting to artificial intelligence, Tyler equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore a variety of free resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. And if today's conversation resonates with you, I want to invite you to check out the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. It's a global community of local government leaders who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of municipal pressure. You can learn more about the MLDC at haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC. And now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Helen Ramirez, former city manager in Brownsville, Texas, and now director of economic and local business development in San Marcos, Texas. Helen, welcome to the podcast. It is a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Seth. It's great to be here.
We are going to have an amazing conversation from California, Texas, to Spain, to space. We're going to cover it all. Hopefully it won't take us 3 hours and it won't turn into a Joe Rogan podcast. So let's start. Let's do what we do. Helen, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born? Tell us about the childhood that kind of shaped you and led you on this unique journey.
No, thank you. I was born in Los Angeles, California. I know we're in Texas, so all you Texans out there know that my grandpa was born in El Paso, and I have and lived to 101. So big Texas roots and California roots as well. So, started there. Went to all girls Catholic high school, and that started kind of my volunteer work. You had to complete 250 hours of volunteer to graduate. So I worked in hospitals, help with affordable housing initiatives, and just it's always been a big part of my life. I was raised by my father. My mother passed away when I was young, and I like to talk about that because it just speaks to the importance of community and family. My mother, when she would see anybody that was her on the road or I remember her pulling aside and helping those in need. And I think she really instilled that even as a young age, help others, help your community. And so, that was such an important part of my life, just being raised that way and then being raised by my grandmother and my father, who's a wonderful mentor for me. So, yeah. My roots started in Los Angeles, and then I made my way to Spain, and then Austin, Brownsville, and then San Marcos. So happy to be here.
So as you're growing up, how many siblings did you have? Where were you at in the line of the siblings?
So 3 sisters. We're all 2 years apart. I'm the middle child, really, the mediator, the facilitator, the one that brings them together, but we're all very close. I'm very fortunate to have 3 sisters. I mean, we're all 3 together, very, very close. And so my father took us to baseball games, Dodger games. I grew up on the Dodgers. Sorry, Astros. I mean, we lived about 15 minutes from Dodger Stadium. So I love soccer and I love baseball. So big fan. Soccer is also good. and football. But yeah, baseball was our love because that's where I grew up.
I love it. So as you're growing up, especially in LA, I mean, talk about just an urban of urban environments. Multiple. I was looking today. In fact, we're going to get to it in your story of LA County. I mean, you're talking about 88 fully incorporated cities, 120 unincorporated communities. I mean, it's just massive to think about that space and that sprawl. Of course, you're in Texas now. We'll talk about Dallas and the Fort Worth and Austin. All these things are just growing, growing, growing. But as you're growing up, did you have any awareness of local government? Did you even know what a city manager was? Like, what were you interested in? What were you thinking, especially as you are starting to move towards college?
Sure. I mean, really, I wasn't introduced really into local government until college. I was originally, uh, I decided to go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. In fact, astronaut Victor Glover, who launched part of Artemis 2, he's an alumnus of San Luis Obispo. I had to throw in that plug because they're a big aerospace school. But I remember I was in architecture school of architecture and environmental design, and I remember a class that we had on like public sector law, and it was the attorney for the city of San Luis Obispo that gave the class. And actually, there was another class I took on public administration given by the city manager of San Luis Obispo as well. So many of the graduates of Cal Poly went on to serve in city management and just city government. So that really, I love those classes. I mean, I think that's when I changed my degree because I'm like, what is this? City and regional planning. What is this? What does that mean? And so when I really fell in love with local government, and then interned at the county of San Luis Obispo. Interestingly enough, I was probably the only Spanish speaker in the department. I worked in the housing department, and much of my interview or report was on migrant workers and migrant housing. So very interesting that I actually surveyed, communities of Spanish-speaking migrant workers to get them better housing conditions. So, yeah, I mean, and that was an internship. So it's just amazing what you can learn from government. I think from that just ended up spurring my interest in local government. I was offered a position there, but I wanted to go back to Los Angeles to be closer to family and also see what I.
Very cool. So, and maybe I want to ask you two things. So, first, that internship, that's a part of your undergrad, right? So, was that set up through the school, or did you? What led to that? Because usually you hear about, you do an MPA or some kind of graduate work, and they try to find you with an internship. How did you find that internship in your undergrad?
So California Polytechnic University requires internships prior to graduation. And so like they have a job board. And so the county was hiring, just very simple, old school, they posting a job, and I applied and was hired right away. And it was a paid internship. I do believe in paid internship. Also, in college, what was so interesting is that I studied abroad for a year as well. So that's what led me to Madrid, Spain, and studying, there, and really living in another country for a year is where I would meet who would be my husband, who's actually a civil engineer and economist. So we had a conversations on drainage, the beautiful sidewalks and plazas, like the typical conversation any couple would have. But it was a wonderful experience living in, even though I spoke Spanish, it's a Castilian Spanish with a Castilian accent. So it's a little bit different, but it was a great time in my life. And who would have thought I would then, marry a Spaniard? And so we did marry after that. And actually, we got married in Los Angeles and then lived there for 4 years before moving to Madrid.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So many elements of the story. So one thing I want to ask, because you are a very successful woman, and I always like to highlight, especially the stories of women in a field that are pushing through kind of the glass ceiling, whatever that looks like. my assumption is, like you just said, you get hired for this internship and you're kind of the only Spanish, maybe that's an element of like, oh, she can speak Spanish. That's a huge plus. Maybe we can even talk about, as we kind of thread through your career, does it feel like, has it ever felt like, here's this unique thing I have, I'm multilingual, and yet so it's like people want you for that, but then they maybe discount, oh, but you're a woman, or maybe you don't have experience, whatever it is. Because one of the things I want to do is I want to encourage all people, especially young people, both to local government, because I think that's part of your story. Is like, I'm kind of interested in architecture and whatever this is. And whoa, here's where I can actually use that to actually do real things, to build real things that people use, local government, which I think is awesome. But it's also, how do you help young people get out of their heads? I think there's kind of this twofold. I think it's great that we're more aware of mental health and some of the things that we're working through, but also when you live in a world where it's so focused on mental health, you can kind of become mentally like tapped out, where you can look at everything negatively and go, oh, well, you can kind of take yourself out of the game by going, oh no, you can look at what maybe is against you, instead of going what opportunities you have. Speaking and looking at you again, you're young. Did you, at this time in your career, did you feel any of that pressure? Did you feel like, okay, I got to work doubly hard to make it, as a woman, or what did it look like? What was going on in your head that you might be able to encourage some young people who are in that spot now looking back?
Sure. I mean, I think our motto at Cal Poly was learn by doing. And so it was really very much a can-do attitude. So I think your attitude speaks volumes. If you ask anybody who I work with, I'm a glass half full kind of person. My mentor, one of my mentors in the city of Hawthorne, California, Mike Goodson, if you're out there, hello. He taught me to always look at two ways: argue a code, but argue both ways of the code, right? Really put yourself in the position of someone else, but argue the point, right? And you can look at something, a code, a policy, in two different lights, but really, and then there's a respect for that. And so so I just want to say is, there is creativity in government. We have to be extra creative. I mean, I think a lot of cities are going towards public-private partnership. So you think that, government, yes, it has to be very creative in a good way, like in partnerships. P3s, and I want you to remember that P3s are not just with private developers or private sector. P3s are also your nonprofit, your educational institutions, your hospitals. And I think that's one of the things the country does a disservice. Sometimes in public-private conferences, we only talk about roads and how to do like a toll road, and that's a P3. Or we look, or bridges, we look at large infrastructure projects and we call those P3s. But P3s are also, I have a government a building. I don't have anybody to lease to. The government doesn't need it. Does an art institute need it? I talk to the university about leasing it. How do I pull my partners in? And that's, I think, one of the big things that we need to change. One, I would say government has to be much more agile now, not only because of the expectations of who we serve, and also because there's purpose. I mean, I think that a lot of us in our careers are thinking, and then now with our younger generation, they're looking at the social factor, the social benefit of what I consume, of who I support. And so if that's important in your life, then government's perfect, because there's purpose every day. And they need people like you that can bring community together. And that's why when I was in Brownsville, I really created the concept of one city. And one city means there's 23 departments and 1,300 employees. Take away the silos, right? Work collaboratively, not only internally as an organization, but externally with partners. And that's the way you can really, your community can really improve and be better. And I see Santa Marcos the same way in terms of, ensuring that we're all working collaboratively for a greater purpose.
No, I love it. I love it. You mentioned the city of Hawthorne. We're going to get there, but before that, you have two stops: the city of La Habra, which is east of LA, out towards Riverside. I used to live in Palm Springs, so I drive that route into LA all the time. And so, I want you to talk about your time at La Habra, and then you go from La Habra to the county, LA County. Now, you already had done an internship at a county before, but again, LA County is just a beast. I mean, I don't know if there's anything like it in the world. Trying to figure out how to, especially for planning and liaison, like what does that look like in a place of 10 million people? So tell us about these two stops as you leave, Cali, as you leave your undergrad, Cali Polytech, and then now you're kind of in the real world of local government, getting your hands dirty. What was it like? Especially in city and then county?
Sure, man. I worked in the county twice. So right out of college, I worked for the Community Development Commission. What was interesting about the CDC, it's called different. It's still called community development, but basically what a lot of what we did was community development block grants, CDBG. That's a nationwide federal program where it's if you're a large city, you receive funding directly to help support low and moderate income people. So what was cool about that project? Well, there was good stuff and not good stuff. And the boring stuff was auditing. So I had to audit like 30 cities, like 15 to 30 cities, which was crazy, right? To make sure that they were using their funding correctly. So it's not as much fun being an auditor, but you knew how to really take seriously public funds. So, I've always, one of the main things that I could talk about is integrity, and I've always lived by my values and my reputation. So that is, to me, it's hugely important that art has never been compromised. That's really big ethics, and that. So I started with this community development corporation. I'd also say that they had a really interesting project. So East Los Angeles, it had a big auditorium conference center that didn't have even a coffee shop in front. So I worked on a redevelopment project with a family that redeveloped their kind of shopping center to include coffee to serve, a low and moderate income city such as East Los Angeles. So that was you got to do a few cool projects like that. But then La Habra is northern Orange County, smaller bedroom community with some retail. I worked in the housing department there, and really interesting. You really get hands on. So there was $500,000 homes and up, and then there's also trailer parks, and you were just trying to, how do you help people that are in that situation? I think the highlight project there was a $1.2 million project with the Boys and Girls Club. So really creating those spaces for our community and kids. And then after that, I went to Hawthorne, which was bigger city, 80,000 people. But I wanted to say that I did work for the county twice. One of the most interesting jobs that I had after La Habra was I went back to the county because they created a new construction management department. And so my mentor, Henry Taylor, which was probably one of the first African-American building officials in LA County at that time, we had met previously when I was the auditor, right? So he's like, there's this new department being built, come and work for us. And I'm like, wow, anything new that you're really creating from scratch is very interesting to me. So my job was for those, projects that were in the county, which was all over the county, expedite them through regional planning, which is the planning department, and in the Department of Public Works. So imagine, and a lot of them were affordable housing projects, such an important project, and streetscape projects for our low and moderate income families. So working with housing authorities, I mean, that's when you really said, we really need to get this through. These families and these people really are counting on it. Some projects had to do with relocating, seniors. And so they even hired, to your like mental health, they even hired psychologists. It was in West Hollywood. So some of them only spoke Russian, and they were Russian Jews. So they were, even the way you approach projects in Los Angeles, because of the diversity and the language of such a unique population, it was very much tailored community. And so imagine, because people were coming back to, when they had to leave their country. And we had psychologists on site helping these elderly people who had, lived atrocious times, and possibly had family that had lived through the Holocaust. We didn't want them to recreate that. We were very intentional in how we work with communities.
April is National County Government Month. It's a time to recognize the amazing work counties do to keep our communities running. From public safety and courts to health services, infrastructure, and everything in between, counties carry an enormous responsibility, and they do it in ways most people never see. And right now, one of the biggest conversations happening across county and local government is how artificial intelligence can help support that work. You know who's helping lead that conversation in local government? That's right, it's Tyler Technologies. Tyler's been helping counties and local governments apply AI in some significant ways, streamlining routine tasks, improving access to information, and helping staff spend more time focused on serving their communities. To help leaders understand what's possible, Tyler has released a brand new ebook. It's called AI for Impact: Proven Results for Government. It highlights inspiring examples of organizations already using AI to strengthen operations, to improve insights, and to make government services easier for residents to navigate. The best part, that ebook is free. You can download it today at tylertech.com/winter. Again, that's tylertech.com/winter. Now, back to the conversation. It's so fascinating because I think, again, that's why I love the podcast, diving into especially places like in LA. If you're on the national scene, you don't live in California, you just think Los Angeles. You just think it's one city. It's just, and Los Angeles has, like we've said, so many cities within it. And Hawthorne is one of those. In fact, in your time there, so this is south. It's right south of the airport, I believe, LAX, which again is its own like city upon itself. And you tell us about, this is kind of when, again, you mentioned space when you were at California Polytechnic, but I think SpaceX has some kind of connection to Hawthorne. Tell us about that. And again, what does that look like when you hear SpaceX? You think, okay, well, sure, I've heard of that, but what did that look like actually in a city to have, a part of its workforce and what it was up to there?
So very interesting time. When I was there, SpaceX hadn't really been, it's not what it is today, right? I think Elon Musk was still in El Segundo, very small at that point, looking to scale up. The biggest project I worked on there, the Hawthorne Airport, where it was the home Northrop Grumman had property there. So Northrop Grumman was always there at Hawthorne Airport, or Jack Northrop Airport. But there really wasn't anything going on at the airport. The city owned and operated it, but didn't really have the money to put in, in the infrastructure it needed to be successful or even compete with LAX, which is a monster of a mega super hub. So, one of the first projects I worked on was the LA Air Force project that was in coordination with El Segundo. Now, the South Bay is known as the Space Coast. You have Boeing, you have Northrop Grumman, you have Raytheon, you have all the big players in a small area, which is, El Segundo, Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, Hawthorne. So in a very small space, beautiful space, you have a lot of talent there in space and technology, right? And not that far from Long Beach, California either, which has its own space sector. And so in 2003, 2002, I don't know if you recall, but there was a base realignment and closure process. The federal government felt that we need to scale down our bases nationwide. And so there was this concern that bases were going to close. That's why you have the Brooks base here in San Antonio that closed and became, what they've done to it is incredible. They made it into almost a mixed use kind of wonderful kind of Brooks City. But the Air Force was very concerned. This is where the brain power of intelligence is and missile control. So for them, it would be devastating to lose the base, right? And so there was a public-private partnership. There was the most complex entitlement process you can think of. We even changed city boundaries included redevelopment, an environmental impact report, environmental impact statement. So you had General Arnold from the Air Force saying, get us our permits within 9 months or less. We need to get this done. And it took an act of Congress to allow the Air Force to sell land in Hawthorne to a developer to be able to afford the $114 million new building. Because what they wanted to show is, don't close this down. We're actually using our own resources to build a new building so that we're not going to be a burden. So, and they found private developers, Kearney and Century Communities, to be able to work with that, deal with that. So with the proper leadership, I mean, I would be remiss without saying, without the leadership of a mayor, of the council, that is so important. In San Marcos is important, in Brownsville, that's why they're successful, is important. Hawthorne had the right leadership at that time. And I was a senior planner there with this big project. And it also helped me learn a lot about, I was being in the room with brilliant people. Jeff Dreitley, Harvard grad, great negotiator. I learned a lot about contract management and negotiation during their time. So to all the young people out there, you may not be the one, leading the meeting, but just being in the room, listening to the negotiation and conversation is a great way to learn negotiation. And so I really encourage, and mentors out there, bring the youth, bring your young employees or your new employees into those meetings, at least to listen and to be, because it's hard. Negotiation, it's not something you learn from a textbook. You can find tips for negotiation, but you learn that while listening to this great stories and complex projects come to light.
Absolutely. I love what you said there. If you're young, say yes to opportunities. If you can be in a room, say yes. Because again, like you say, there are things, 90% of life is experience. It's not textbook. Yes, textbook serves a place. I'm a huge, I have multiple master's degrees. I've spent a lot on education. But again, a lot of that is even network and being able to take something like a book and its insight and then discuss it in the class and then have an internship or have a job and an opportunity to actually play it out and see how does it work, and so, and then I love what you said too. If you are in a position of leadership, invite people just to be flies on the wall to experience that, because it's so shaping. I think in light of that whole thing that you just said, it's always interesting that pressure or change breeds sometimes the most creativity, and it puts you under the gun of like, oh, we got to hold now. So all of a sudden we got to act, we got to get creative in what we're doing to actually keep the base or to stay active. So it's always interesting to see pressure bring out creativity and opportunity. So from Hawthorne, you end up in Spain, and you're going to, again, tell us about, you mentioned your husband, but again, tell us about how you go back to Spain, how you start working for Indra Defense and Space Manufacturing, this huge company, and what that was like now working for the, I would assume, private sector. Was there a public sector, work in light of that? Tell us about that, because that sounds totally fascinating.
Sure. No, it was, we had completed a wonderful project in Hawthorne. It won the LA American Planning Association project award, and it was interesting because after that whole experience, because the city, it was the beginning of public-private partnership. The city would go on to have a long-term private lease on the airport, which would lead then to the infrastructure needed to be able to capture or companies such as Gulfstream, and then who would then become taken over by SpaceX. So it's interesting. The Falcon 9 being made in LA there is amazing, right? I think the difference between, and I just want to, for context, you can't really see the Falcon 9 if you are driving by, Hawthorne, right? But you can see Starship if you drive by Highway 4 in Boca Chica Starbase, Brownsville, Texas. So that's amazing. You see something in its raw form. but it was a wonderful time. And so my husband said, it's time to go to my country, right? Let's go to Spain. And, I said, well, I'm fine. I just love what I do, urban planning. And I just don't want to give up being a woman. And sometimes, in another country, I just wanted to make sure that I could work in what I studied, because I really love what I do. And so that was a negotiation that I had with my husband. We thought we would be there 5 years or 3 years, but we ended up staying 10 years. I worked for ProIntech, which became a subsidiary of Indra. What was amazing is it was an architectural engineering, environmental and planning firm. It was right back in northern Madrid. So what's I was the only American in this building of 400 employees. So interesting how you say that, in the county of San Luis Obispo, I was really the only Spanish speaker in in that housing department at that time. I'm sure they have a Spanish speakers now, but imagine being like the only American and, in the headquarters of your company, right? So, luckily I took Spanish literature, believe it or not, in college. So my level of, even though I'm first generation Mexican American, has always spoken and taken Spanish classes. I mean, when you take a literature class, those are authors. So my level with Spanish was very, very high. Um, fully bilingual. And so, but still, I had to create a technical dictionary of, this is the planning term and this is the Spanish planning term. And I just had to have my own Excel that I had to create of technical language, because I was reviewing technical documents and then writing technical land use ordinances. Because to your point, while I worked in the private sector, all my clients were public. So the city of Madrid was one of the clients that I worked for. And the whole, if you've ever been to Madrid, they have this beautiful museum corridor, Paseo Recoletos. That was one of my projects, where we actually revitalized some major plazas, including Cervantes, and also the expansion of the El Prado Museum was part of that project. So it was a great corridor plan. So it was amazing stuff there that we were able to do. Another big project is, if you're into soccer, there's a new city called Valdebebas. They call it the sports city. Well, it's also the new training area back then for the Real Madrid soccer football club. So yeah, I got to meet, that's when you're like, oh my gosh, pinch myself. Is this reality? I'm actually seeing all the soccer players, Guti and everybody getting there, getting ready to practice. I mean, those are amazing moments in life that, I think I've been very blessed in my life, because I think humility is very important. I'm telling you and sharing this with you, but I'm very humble about this, and I don't normally talk about this part of my life. But I think it's good to share that international work is hard, right? You have to find your place. Sometimes you won't find it until you're in the country. So all the people out there, that are saying, how do I get an international business, or international work, or international this? A lot of times it's very hard to get a job from the US international. Lots of times you have to take that leap of faith and go live in the country and find work. So for all everyone out there, other than the Peace Corps, everyone needs to go to the Peace Corps, but lots of times it's you going there and then finding yourself and finding work in the country.
What a cool opportunity to be a part. And that's why, again, I love local government, or whether it's public or private sector, but you're hands-on with local government. You get to do this work that, again, people use, like, like a stadium or bridge or whatever it is. You're like, this is being used on a daily basis by real people. It's not just policy. It's not just idea. It's real infrastructure, real things. That's so cool. What was, before we come back, you're going to then come back to the city of Hutto, Texas. Now, now we're going to Texas. But before that, what was the best thing you ate in Spain? What do you miss about Spain? Is it the food? Is it what do you miss about Spain the most?
Gosh. Oh, how much time do we have? You know what's so interesting? Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. So in Spain, food is so important, right? That you know how we get a turkey for Thanksgiving, you get it, or for Christmas. Well, in Spain, they give you a whole leg of jamón serrano, so the serrano ham, the one that you slice very thinly. So I remember, great story. I love serrano ham. I love jamón ibérico. So I remember they're handing out the big old, large, like the whole ham, the whole leg of ham with a little thing, like you were carrying it like if it was a backpack of food, a whole jamón ibérico. So I love that. And also their tapas. Tapas are like very small appetizers kind of things. If you go to northern Spain, they have a lot of seafood infused type of tapas. So fresh, fresh seafood, and some of the most unique type of tapas that you can have in the country. So highly the northern, like kind of Bath, San Sebastian area has really good tapas, and you have to have great jamón ibérico. It's also very good.
All right, you've whet my appetite. I'm a big foodie, so and Spain is on my list. I mean, they have. I think the most popular restaurant in the world is in Spain, and so anyway, so many good things. I gotta get out there. Now you've whet my appetite. Where I gotta have the ham. We just had Easter. Easter's kind of the ham. I gotta get some Serrano ham. Oh, and tapas. I love finding. That's why I love those kind of restaurants too. Even here, because you get a taste of so many things. Right? It's just so good. Okay, so you make your way back. How in the world did you land in Texas? And tell us about Hutto. Again, this is am I saying that right? Hutto? Yes. Hutto, Texas. It's about 27,000 people. This is the Austin metro area. It's north of Austin. It's I was just thinking about is it Pflugerville? Serena, I think is her name.
Serena, she's awesome. Yeah,
Serena. I know. I keep asking her. She's got to come on the podcast.
She has to. She's a must. That's that's a must.
Everyone says brilliant story. And so tell us about, what brings you back to Texas and what is it like now? You're going to work, you're going to be now, this seems to be a significant kind of, what would you say? Place in your story, because you're going to be director of development services or executive director of business development and then assistant city manager. So now for the first time, we're going to get assistant city manager, which, so tell us about the city of Hutto.
Yes. Well, I love the Hutto Hippos. And I would like to say, as a public employee that has worked on multiple cities, you can fall in love with more than one city. Can love multiple communities. I remember I come up from an area of 88 cities. I'm not saying I love all 88 cities, but I'm saying the cities that you've touched, the places that you worked, you can fall in love with that because it's about community, right? And if that's your purpose, then you can fall in love with more than one city. And so I fell in love with Hutto. Why did we end up in Austin? We ended up in Austin because my husband found us a job in Austin. The Spanish headquarters of the company he works for was headquartered in Austin. So Austin, has an international. It brought international work. And so Karen Bailey, she's another person you need to have on your podcast. She was a City Administrator of the Year in 2016 for the state of Texas. Trailblazer with women in city management. And I'm very fortunate to work for Stephanie Reyes, another woman, female city manager, trailblazer here in San Marcos. So Karen hired me as director of development services. She was, I really owe Karen a lot. Hopefully she's listening, because, not everybody could see the value of working internationally. Unless you've lived internationally, we all need the same things. We all need shelter. We all need good community. We all need education. We all need different types of housing types. I think, I was fortunate. I didn't tell you that part. The fortunate part of my time working for the private sector is I also worked for in the International Business Development Office, and I worked on projects in developing countries such as India, Mozambique, and even Baja California, so which is Mexico. So there was a time that we helped with those countries. And just FYI, when you develop a plan for India, you're not developing for 80,000 people. It's usually 1 million people with 80 villages. It was a wonderful time in my life. But I'm just saying she was able to say, all that experience, is relevant to your job being a director of development services, right? And also your time in Los Angeles, working with building, working with planning. I think what was unique about what she allowed me to do is I also supervise the engineering department. So imagine a true one-stop shop, right? Because sometimes you're like, okay, I know I can do this from planning perspective and the building perspective, but sometimes you don't realize what you can do from the engineering perspective, and utilities is so important. So I was able to bring everybody together and start. So it was a great time where we can really be very collaborative and problem solve together.
Let me ask you something. If culture really matters in your organization, why isn't it being built with intention? Not discussed, not delegated, actually built and then sustained with just as much intention. Here's the hard reality. Culture isn't what your organization believes. It's what your leaders tolerate, reward, and repeat. In most cities and counties, they say culture matters while leaving it completely to chance. That's why this April, we are doing something different. Inside the Municipal Leadership Development Circle, you know it as the MLDC, we're kicking off a 3-month deep dive into organizational culture. Weekly content, conversations with leaders across North America, and live training sessions from the Leadership and Culture program. We're going to work through the ideas and insights from books like Turn the Ship Around, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and Unreasonable Hospitality. But more importantly, we're going to translate those insights into how you actually lead your team in the unique context of local government. For the first time, we're opening this up in a big way. We're offering 500 memberships to the MLDC for just $500. That gives you full access to the MLDC, the weekly content, and the vibrant community of leaders from across North America. But here's where it's really over the top. We're giving 3 months of insider access to the Leadership and Culture program. That's a $2,500 value. We're doing this because transforming City Hall from the inside out isn't just optional, it is necessary, and it's necessary right now. But here's the catch. We kick off our first live training session on the topic of culture on Thursday, April 16th. And so once the 500 spots are gone, they're gone. So if you're ready to stop talking about culture and to actually start building it, I want you to head over to HaltingWinter.com/MLDC. That's HaltingWinter.com/MLDC, or simply just use the link in the show notes. Secure your spot today. Now, back to the conversation. What was the I want to just pause for a second because what you said there about kind of Karen had to really not really take a chance, but she had to see it from a different angle, because I think that's one of the issues I've even encountered, because I haven't been in local government. I was an orchestral conductor, then I was a pastor. And so I've just fallen in love with local government and feel like there needs to be kind of a micro, what micro has done for the trade. So we need our own voice to highlight the amazing work going on in local government, but kind of I can be an outsider. And it's like, oh, well, you don't really know. And it's like, oh man, I've led some pretty big things. Like, I think I know leadership. And it's like, well, I don't know, because again, we're just used to kind of tribalism. It's easier to see what we've experienced. And so, yeah, it's great to feel like, so to encourage, again, whether you're young or maybe you're not young, maybe you're just transitioning, maybe you're coming from the private sector and you want to work for public sector, like still be bold, still, try to, don't think it disqualifies you from making a change. It's kind of the unique things now in life is that, we used to kind of work for the same company and the same sector forever. And now it's like people change all the time. And so I love that because it gives you the opportunity to really find what's a good fit for you. And so it sounds like you have this opportunity to find fit. And that's where, talk about the path to assistant city manager. Was that just because, again, it seems like, you're effective at what you do. So it's kind of like, hey, why don't you take the executive director job? Now, why don't you become the assistant city manager? Or did you see that and were you like, oh, this is interesting? Maybe was that more you leaning towards that? Or was that more people just telling you, getting voluntold to more leadership?
Yes, this voluntold thing is interesting, right? During my time there, there was a change in city management. So Karen Bailey moved on to work for ICMA. So it was a greater, her influence was just greater um, with regard to multiple states and international city, county management associations. ICMA hired her on. So that was good for Karen. I mean, and also the change in, as you know, elected officials, right? And so a new city manager was brought in and felt that economic development was pretty much the most important thing that we should concentrate on. Now, Karen, what she felt and what we started working towards is she felt that there should be a balance of not leave Hutto as a fast growing residential community only, that it be a mix of commercial, industrial, and residential. And I think that was I remember the pie chart. We're at, 75 to 80% residential. What if we shifted? What if we, had 50% residential and the rest non-residential, commercial, other types of uses? That would also help our tax base. It would lower property taxes. It would be and it also provide jobs for our community, right? Which is, very talented and has the ability. And we also had, TSTC, which is the community college. They call it the higher education center. And so it was there. It was brand new, and we still needed new businesses to be able to provide jobs. So I think she started that um, goal. And when the new city manager came, he wanted to really accelerate that, right? And he was hired to accelerate that. So I learned one of the things that's when I first touched on economic development from a city perspective, because as things change in the city, they're like, well, we need it to be a kind of city department. We need someone that knows how to talk to businesses, has done business development. Helen, can you take on that role and transition to that? And I did. And so it was wonderful. I had former Judge Grabal, which was, judge from Williamson County. He was our chair for the Hutto Economic Development Corporation for a while. So it was just a great opportune time to really say, let's bring in a tech park. We created innovation park with Titan development. And so, but we also worked a lot with a lot of our farming families, long-term families who wanted to sell at the right time for the right reason. So they wanted their purpose. Like if I was going to sell, it's because I'm creating jobs for people. And so I think that was a really big part of my role, was the whole mega site, putting that together, and also ensuring that there was success there. We did create over 1,000 jobs over that time period. And we also created the co-op district, would become the new city hall. I actually CO'd the city hall and library right before I accepted the job in Brownsville. So I never got to office out of that building, but I heard everyone loved it, and it was a really great mixed use dense project. But yes, I was voluntold to be this assistant city manager. Going back to your question, I'm not accusing that question. There was just the city manager was trying to find the right assistant city manager, and he said, I think you're it. And I said, okay, let's go. Let's go. And I was ACM. It was a great time because I was still able to oversee a lot of the development departments that I had worked closely with and economic development. But it was very, very, very fast paced, right? Very fast paced. And so when the former deputy city manager, Noel Bernard of the that had worked in Taylor, Texas, which is right near Hutto, was became the new city manager for Brownsville. He called me and said, "Would you like to be my deputy city manager? I really need someone that's good with codes and economic development." I went there and I saw the Brownsville Airport, flights to United Airline, American Airlines, the Port of Brownsville, the beautiful downtown, it's zoo, founded in 1971. I'm like, all right, this is an the Economic Development Corporation. I thought this is perfect. This is what I want. It's a lot of work. And I said, well, it's time to move our family to Brownsville. And mind you, by this time, we had 3 kids. And I said, our kids, our family has lived in Spain and in Austin, but it's never really, uh, it didn't really hasn't gotten to know its really Mexican roots. So I think Brownsville being about, 90% Latino and on the border with Matamoros was a very unique time for my family because also it's important to them to know their culture, right? And their background. And they loved it. And then space with basic there, it was like the cherry on top, right? So, you get South Padre Island, the beautiful beach area, the most innovative country, company in the world, and just a wonderful, authentic community. I mean, I think of San Marcos and think of Brownsville, and I really think of authenticity and that community vibe in terms of we're unique in our own way, right? And we're proud that we're special in that way. And we welcome people, but we also want them to be appreciative of our environment and our community because we're very proud of who we are.
I love that you explain the move to Brownsville as multifaceted. You saw it as a win for your family in kind of understanding heritage and more connecting with yourself and your story. I love that you saw it as obviously professionally, like, wow, there's so much to do with economic, kind of all your experience and all your passions you're finding like in this city of, right, and it's like almost 200,000, and it's right on the border. It's SpaceX. There's so many cool things. But here's the big question. You're going to end up the city manager of Brownsville. Did you have any, it doesn't sound like city management was really on your mind, in your like trajectory. What happens when you get to Brownsville? Again, you're gonna, and just for the audience, you're gonna get to Brownsville in 2019. Just in case you're listening to this in the year 2075 and you found the archives of the Halting Winter podcast, you're like, why does that mean anything? We went through this little thing called the pandemic in 2020. So within a year, you're gonna go through this, which I'm sure maybe you even speak about because you're not only the deputy city manager, you're the executive director of Greater Brownsville. And again, when you think about economic development and kind of forward thriving, I don't know if anything put a damper on that more than the pandemic. Everyone's at home. No one's thinking about economic development and growth. You're thinking about survival and like, what does this even mean? And everything changes with working from home now. And are we even going back to offices downtown? Talk about that whole reality of walking through something like the pandemic in your role. And then what in the world led you to become, are you voluntold to become the interim city manager? Like, tell us the story. What happens here?
Wow. Well, I would say that Brownsville didn't stop even during COVID. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that the city had to an advantage is that it's had its own health department and wonderful relationships with the UT School of Public Health Houston. They have a Brownsville location. So imagine and we had a wonderful leadership of, at that time, Dr. Gowan, doctor, gynecologist, also, very in tune with health. So we were very blessed in the way that we had a elected official who was a doctor that had all the wonderful contact. And we also had Dr. Rodriguez, who was the director of health and wellness, who also had wonderful connections and collaborations with hospitals and labs and universities. And so, and we also have the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, the importance of universities, just like we have Texas State here in San Marcos, so do we have UTRGV in Brownsville. So the whole ecosystem teams together. I'll tell you that we CO'd a new airport during COVID. Like we had our most important, 90, 1,000 square foot airport terminal, beautiful modern airport completed during the COVID times. So we went from in-person building inspection to virtual building inspection. And then we also, with our Economic Development Corporation, created all these, like our downtown, they don't have drive-throughs, and everybody was doing drive-throughs. We, within 24 hours, we made our own like drive-through stop signs throughout downtown, so our residents could go do, have a made-up drive-through through downtown, so our restaurants wouldn't all close. So, we did a lot of creative things, and that's why I was talking about government needs to be agile and creative and kind of out of the box and to be successful. And so I'll tell you one thing that we had a double whammy in Brownsville, because we not only experienced COVID, but we also experienced migrant influx. Any city along your border with Mexico had to work through and I say our focus was very humanitarian way of, we helped 240,000 migrant asylum seekers during a very short time. Okay. And if it wasn't for our nonprofit and, Catholic charities, our federal government, through the both administrations, the governor's office, Governor Abbott assisted the city as well. I mean, everybody had to come together to help that many people, because what we didn't want is also, people sleeping in the downtown. I mean, you saw that throughout the United States. And I vowed, after living in Los Angeles and all the homeless problems that it had in downtown LA, I just remember telling the mayor, Cowan. I went to two mayors, first Mayor Mendez and Mayor Cowan, who is the current mayor, is, not on my watch. I promised myself I would protect our downtown. I mean, it's from an urban planner's perspective and from a deputy city manager perspective. That's the heart of our city. We really need to protect everyone, right? Our businesses, our community, and those that need humanitarian support. So, it was a time also we had successfully competed to host the Games of Texas, which is 17,000 amateur athletes were going to come to Brownsville. They had already, it was going to be in 2021 during COVID. So they're like, no, we can't have it until a couple of years later because we got to get out of the COVID. But then we're like, oh, you have this whole migrant situation. Are you going to be able to host what you really, the game's amateur athletes, which is like 18 or 19 sports, like from boxing to track and field to soccer to everything? Are you going to be able to host all these people? And we're like, yeah, if we competed for it, we're going to do it all. And, we almost had a boycott of some families that were not sure about doing it. But I think I like to, call TAF and all of them said, no, they're ready. They can do it. And we had a wonderful, about, I would say 20 to 30,000 people there, and very athletic game while we were still dealing with everything else. So, and how did we do that? With a lot of communication and partnerships. And that's what I'm telling you, no matter, things are always going to come out. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because change is always going to come. We don't know what the next thing is going to be. But if you're always working on eggshells and so nervous, first of all, are you going to be happy? Probably not. But it's okay being uncomfortable with these positions, positions of leadership. That's what it is. It entails, but they're also very rewarding in itself, right? You can do big things, but you have to also think those things can be risky at times, right? And scary.
Absolutely. I love it. Be comfortable with uncomfortability. I think that is such a great leadership reality and lesson. Yeah, like if you want the same old, then local government is probably not for you. At least if you want to be a part of a city that's thriving, like you do have to be agile. You do have to figure out, how are we adapting? Like you said, that's also the other thing why I like pointing out local government. Like when you hear about we live in a world where oftentimes we just hear about when we think of politics, we think the federal level, right? And you think about the big things that you see on whatever news station you listen to. But the reality is there's real places that had to deal with that. Like you said, like you have all these people coming across the border. We have to now figure out, like, where do they sleep? Where do they live? What's going on here? Someone really has to do that. It's not just a talking point on the news. And I think that's where, no one's throwing parades usually for your local government leaders. It's like, but they're the ones actually, again, the government of the people doing the work, not just doing press conferences. And so anyway, how amazing.
Yes, and they are doing the work. I always, I guess, I go back to leadership, the leadership of the mayor, the city commission or the city council here, the leadership of the city manager. I mean, and it's so important. And so leadership is exactly why I competed for the city manager seat. So when Noel Bernal went on to Adams County, Colorado, I was like, gosh, we're doing so many good things. We've been so successful. We have great leadership. A culture with the way we wanted to be, treating each other right, non-siloed. I thought, I was already thinking, I wrote in the napkin that one city, we need to be united as one and non-siloed. This is a chance to really make that a reality. And so, there were 33 applicants. I competed, in the professional recruitment process like everybody else, and became the first female city manager in the history of Brownsville after 170 years.
It's so amazing. And I know we could talk for another hour on. I want to be mindful of your time. Tell us about in Brownsville, you're now the city manager. Tell us, what do you remember about now that you're in that position for the first time? What was it like to feel now the pressure from that unique role? Because I do think it's not just a different department head. It is such a unique role, kind of being the focal point of what I call the kind of the electricity, pull for the three-headed snake of now you're the one council's going to go to. You're the one residents, you feel kind of, you're the one staff. All those directors are kind of like, tugging and pulling at. What was it like to be the city manager? And tell us a little bit about what you said that, what did you call it? One city?
Yeah.
Tell us about that because it sounds really cool.
Yes, I remember I was literally in my kitchen, and that's, on a weekend in the morning, I was thinking of like, what is going to be my vision? What is that one goal I feel that we really need? And I think that cities, again, they can be successful, but we need to accelerate our success. We have all the tools, but how can we do that? And I remember writing down one city. We need to work as one together, respectfully with one another, but non-siloed. Like our engineering department was in a different department than our public works. Let's put them together. Just that collaboration and how it was. Well, your customer is not. It's yes, the community, but your customer is also your coworker. And then how am I treating my coworker? Am I treating them with respect? The same respect I would want. Do I feel comfortable where I work? Am I scared where I work? Why? And so just a real caring environment. And if we can successfully do that ourselves as one 1,300 employees, imagine if we can compound that and change the trajectory of our whole community. And then from there, our region, right? But we have to demonstrate that. They have to see us. You are all leaders, right? So we wanted to make sure that, first of all, let's make sure our house, everybody in the house really is moving in that direction. And then from there, let's include the school district, right? Let's include our hospital. Let's include the developers. And so I just remember it all coming together when I was visiting the school district, Brownsville ISD, and I see our kids that they adopted it to include like one, their own vision, one vision. They were adopting, when I was seeing that our partners was adopting the concept of one and one city. And I said, we're there, because it wasn't about creating stickers and sticking it all over the city. It was really about those collaborative partnerships, and that we were really like the zoo. I'll give you an example. The zoo, we supported the zoo master plan, and we didn't increase their revenue. The city paid for it, but one of the main revenue generators was a big zip line, 130 feet high, that you would actually see all of the zoo in Matamoros. It was a great revenue generator, but they're like, we take care of animals. We don't know how to project manage. And so our staff took it on. Our staff project managed the beginnings, the end of that zip line for our zoo. And now it's a wonderful revenue generator. So that's like when we just created this enterprise project management office, we said, we're going to help our neighbors. If they can't project manage their project and we're funding them, let us do it in collaboration with you. And so I think that was a really great way to show, we mean what we say when we talk about One City. And I think that people also believing in themselves or not believing in themselves, I think the Latino community would always ask, is SpaceX just going to use this for manufacturing? Are they going away? Are they really going to stay? Because in 2019, there were 500 employees. Now they're at 4,300 employees. 4,300. Now they created their own city starbase. Now, I mean, it's like, but I have calls every day in like every other day or something in 2022 saying, oh, they're just going to use this. They're just going to be manufacturing. Who would have thought that Elon would say no? And it's not, I'm actually creating the city, moving my headquarters. I mean, I'm here for the long run. And so, but sometimes it's hard to believe in yourself that this can really happen in South Texas, in Brownsville, but it's there and it's real and it's tangible. And a lot of our families, are very successful.
You said something there I want to highlight and then ask you a question to dive into the weeds here, because we have a lot of city managers, county administrators that listen to this, and I always want to give them at least one real nugget of action they can do. I love this idea, and I think it's probably the most consistent theme over the last specifically 3 months of podcast interviews. It's come up over and over that we have to start working together. We can't, like with budget realities and the ability of thriving and flourishing, cities, counties, etc. If you stay alone and try to do it all yourself, you're wasting resources. Like you said, like I think there's a lot of nonprofits that they have the heart and the mission. They don't have the tactile skill to build. And so if they can partner and go, hey, we have planning, we have actually the skilled people that can bring that to life. What's the passion? What's the vision? How do we work together? Whether that's, fire, police, whatever it is, building, economic development. And so I think, that's why I want to ask you, you may say, oh, well, you've got 1,300 employees. It's so big. It's easy for you. It doesn't sound easy. That sounds like a ton of communication. And someone who's maybe over a city of 15,000 may say, well, we don't have that many employees. We just do that naturally. And I would push back and say, I don't think you do. I think you think you do, but you're probably in silos. You're probably missing out on a lot of opportunity. What would you say is a tactile step if someone goes, man, I really like this. We're trying to build collaboration, but maybe there's some challenge in it. What do you think is one of the key things they could do to really implement movement towards that kind of collaboration and that kind of communication?
Sure. I think that one of the most important things any leader can do, because it really starts from the top, right? You're the city manager. Here, Stephanie Ray is the city manager. Alan Gard is the interim city manager, and Brownsville Wally Finance city manager. You have to live the value. So if you see your teams that are siloing, a lot of things that I would do at the beginning and is, have you talk to this person? Did you include this? Did you run it by this person? So a lot of it was like, who's missing in the conversation? And sometimes when we're not included, our natural, human response is like, why didn't they invite me? We take it like almost personal when it may not be. It really makes someone just had someone or they're new and they're not sure. So I think a lot of you have to live the value, right? If you're saying it's important to share information, it's important to multidisciplinary problems or very complex problems, take multidisciplinary solutions, right? So the person that you think can solve the problem is not always the best solution out there. I remember just in Hutto, I was over all the different engineering and planning departments. Sometimes our best, solutions would come from parts. They were just thinking differently. So what I would say is, bring those partners. I hear in some workers, we have the ability to bring in Texas State work together to solve problems, or create new projects together. Our downtown association, bringing that collaboration together to improve our downtown. We have a new hotel. It's a public-private partnership with Texas State and the city of San Marcos. That's a great example. 130 key hotel in the downtown. That's hard to do, but we're both bringing in our incentives and our working collaborating to make that a reality for all. So, you can think it, and also you have to make the hard decisions. If someone's a rock and it will not budge, then, this may not be the right place for them. I mean, you're in charge of hiring and firing, of course, through the right process. I think, everyone deserves dignity in how you do anything. But if this is the direction you're headed and there's a lot of resistance, or there is, find the root cause of that resistance. I always talk about the iceberg, right? We stay up here and we see the success, but who's holding up or what's holding up? Maybe it's a process and not a person. Who's holding up this? Is there something in our policies that support silos or mistrust? And so, does it take time? Is it hard to get to root problems? Absolutely. But once you do it, wow, not only will your employees realize that you really did what it took to undo those silos and undo those chains, they will just grow and they'll be your greatest creative advocates and most agile, successful employees.
Amazing. In 2026, you end up here where you're at today, San Marcos, Texas. Tell us about San Marcos. Tell us about what this is a unique place because it's in between Austin and San Antonio, which just sound like they're both continually growing and going to like merge into San Marcos, I guess, eventually. I think even when I looked at San Marcos, it says that it's considered to be a part of the Austin Metroplex, which I think I only understand how since it's in the middle there. But it's also, San Marcos is a part of like 3 counties, I think, that you're in. So talk about this unique place. It has been the fastest growing city in the United States. 2013, 2014, it was like 44,000 in 2010. It's over 75,000 now. Tell us about this unique place and what that means for, as the director of economic and local business development, that sounds like 3 full-time jobs to try to keep up with that kind of growth. So tell us about what brought you there and what that looks like.
Yeah, I think the best part of it is the fact that it's a new department. And so it really includes Main Street, downtown, which has a tax increment reinvestment zone. So a lot of great projects downtown coupled with economic development, which is business retention and attraction and workforce development. So it's really everything. Historically, economic development departments are more on the traction side and maybe some workforce and retention, but including the Main Street component makes it really interesting to me because I think that's the heart of a lot of cities. It's all of our mom and pop and small businesses and very supportive. We have a beautiful San Marcos River, so the natural environment is something very special in our community. But also, we're at 90,000 population actually, and then also we really are I like to call it on point and on center of the 2 mega regions, which is Austin and San Antonio. So we're right in the middle of it all. And we're going to be creating an innovation corridor with our partner cities because we're a part of this overarching umbrella called the Hayes-Caldwell Economic Development Partnership. So here we are saying we're not siloed. We are part of many regions, Caldwell, Hayes, Comal, 3 different counties, but mostly we are the county seat of Hayes and worked a lot with Hayes County on many of our projects, our downtown revitalization, and then Texas State with it's Pac-12, so it was approved to be part of the Pac-12, an R1 Research Institute, and just all these amazing things. They want to grow to 50,000, imagine. So that and also created the Star Park, which is a 58-acre aerospace accelerator. And on the aerospace side, we also announced Starburst, which is an innovative accelerator also with aerospace and defense. And then also we just, we have premium outlet malls. So one of our highest taxpayers is Gucci Outlet, believe it or not. And so it's just amazing time in our city, and just very proud. We have a beautiful San Marcos regional airport as well, with hundreds of acres adjacent to that. So really, when I remember in 2019, I went to this conference called City Age. It was with the Dallas Federal Reserve. They talk about how airports are regional economic engines, and a lot of times cities or regions, or they overlook airports, but we have 20 tenants, almost 20 tenants at the airport, and we have Barry Aviation, uh, big aerospace aviation, and also defense contractor, and we have U.S. Aviation, which actually trains our Air Force to be pilots. So that's happening. We have Collins Aerospace also here, and that is part of Raytheon and CFAN. So there's a lot going on here, but I think part of our goal is to tell our story, to invite our development community to be here, to be a resource, and really to help us just really create more jobs, and just support our veterans, our workforce, and just really, be in a situation where you don't have to necessarily travel to Austin or San Antonio to work. You can live, work, play, be educated, and have a wonderful life here in San Marcos, and just live in a smaller community, but really surrounded by giants.
I think it sounds like the first lesson that you kind of highlighted in your story working for a city was, I think you said, Karen, had you be mindful that you can't just build all the houses just because people want to move here. You have to think about the quadrants of what makes a city thrive. And that's economic development and all the kind of different spaces you need, residential, commercial, et cetera. And so, and now you're doing that on this expanse to go, yeah, you don't have to, we're not just a commuter place and then you go work in San Antonio or Austin. Like, we can have those things here. But it's one of the things I love to talk about with leaders, and maybe we'll start to wrap up towards this, but in your position as a key leader over such a segment with economic development, how do you both live in the now of all the projects you just mentioned? So you have present day projects that are I'm sure, years, right, in the making of how they come together and all those things that have to happen to make them turn into reality. But then you also have to be looking at the future. And I think in a city that has doubled in size in 15 years, as some people again today with a new iPhone every year, you're just kind of like, growth and new things happen. People don't understand the infrastructure alone for a doubling of the size of a city, like 45 to 90,000 people. That is insane. And so how do you, in your role, try to live in the present and keep things moving in the present while also thinking about the future, so that you don't handicap yourself to go, oh no, we've swung the pendulum too far to one way, or what that is? How do you wrestle with that in the unique environment of local government?
Sure. I mean, I think economic development strategies are short-term, midterm, and long-term, right? And so that's how I look at economic development and local development as an ecosystem. And all the ecosystem includes infrastructure, right? It includes utilities. It includes higher education, workforce. How is that ecosystem working, and what are our gaps in our ecosystem? Right? It's almost like a SWOT analysis that's ongoing. And also going back to the root cause, if there's some barrier to momentum and growth in that sector or area, what do we need? And sometimes it takes, charter amendment. Sometimes it's so structurally engraved. Maybe it's a change in an ordinance, a change in the policy. Maybe it's finding the right partner. So what do we really need to start working on now that's kind of handicapping us for the future 3 years from now? And so we're already identifying those, because we need to look. Some deals, like one of our biggest deals, we have Amazon distribution here. We have very reputable. We announced the Buc-ee's. Everybody loves Buc-ee's, and so we identified some barriers to development, and making sure that we maybe reduce the barriers, but also ensure that there's a community benefit, right? Because I will say, mayor and council, I'm very, very, I love the fact that they really think about community benefit, right? It's not just about bringing a company in just because we need one. What is the benefit to our community that live here? And so and they ask the hard questions. And I think that's a great thing. We should be asking the questions. It's taxpayer dollars, right? And so that's what I'm saying. You always have to look whether we're doing a transportation master plan right now. So that's what we're thinking about. Well, how are our transportation systems, which include passenger rail? We have an Amtrak station. Who knows in the future? Maybe that could be fast rail. You never know. But those things are the things that, even with airplanes, we're talking about electric vertical takeoff and landing in Dallas. Well, we want to make sure that we're positioned to also be able to take in eVTOL if that's the future. So technology, broadband was a big project that we're doing in Brownsville. We have our own fiber lines here in San Marcos. So we're set up for a lot of the things that, we're set up really well. We just have to, we have the momentum. We just have to accelerate it a little bit. But the great thing is that you have all the success here. You just continue the partnership, one thing that we're launching April 16th is a developer survey, just business survey. Like, how are you doing? How can we help you? How often do we really create programs, but we don't get any data to substantiate where we're going? And so data informed decision making with just asking who you want to serve, what they need. And so it's 16 questions, not 40. So look out if you're a business in San Marcos and you want to come and come to Texas and San Marcos and start a business here or interested, look out for that April 16th survey, because we want to hear from you.
I love it. And I love that. Again, it's why I think local government leaders are some of those brilliant people on earth, because of all the things you have to manage to think about. Like, it's not just bringing in Amazon. It's okay. Now, what's that going to look like with traffic and with the power needs and water needs and all the things that then have to be provided? Like, there's so many things to think about. And it's just an amazing, amazing work. And man, San Marcos is definitely blessed to have you leading the helm of development. Sounds super exciting. Again, all the things happening. I love that. I think it's a unique time in local government, specifically, like you said, with like even transportation, like again, the way we deliver and the way we do transportation. It's really exciting. And it's the difference between, again, having over 300 episodes now. It seems like those leaders that are succeeding are really pushing against an old motto of kind of local government, which is, well, that's not the way we do it. We always do it this way, right? It's like, and we got to push away against that. Like, there's nothing wrong with looking, right? Local government can't be as risky as Amazon. We don't have competitors like Amazon. We can't just bankrupt our cities. But we have to get out of the mold, I think, that's always too safe or risk averse. And we have to press forward and go, how do we lean into the opportunities of our future? And it seems like you've been doing that in all the stops you've been a part of.
Well, thank you so much, Seth. I really appreciate this time with you and the audience. And hopefully I can shed some light on government and really encourage, we can be innovative. We have to be creative. As we grow, whether we grow fast or grow slowly. I mean, redevelopment is even harder than greenfield development. So it's a great profession, and I hope everybody gives it an opportunity and even go between public and private sector. I think that's great. So
it's perfect. Oh, thank you, Helen, for sharing your life, your leadership journey, and your insights. Just a great story.
Wonderful.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter podcast remind us where government really lives, locally. Right here in our cities, our counties, the communities that shape our everyday life. If today's conversation resonated with you, please subscribe and share the episode to help these stories reach others. I'm Seth Winterhalter. You can find me at HaltingWinter.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.